Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by...
When Signs and Displays Direct was launched 15 years ago, it featured a complete line of banners and stands, product displays, and more. Today, the company is known as SDD and is the industry leader in turnkey, no-inventory POP programs. SDD has expanded into branding programs for both corporate and private label, as well as consulting services for retail showroom design and more. Visit sdd-us.com. That's sdd-us.com. All right, time once again for Music Night at the Majestic. With me tonight, Jerry Douglas. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's hope you feel the same way when this dog and pony show's wrapped up.
No, I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will. This is good. This is fun. This is the fun part for me.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I wanted to talk to you for a really long time. And I remember sometime early 90s on a show that I used to do, Steve Warner was the guest. And I was talking with Steve, and I tell him about Life's Highway. And I told him, I said, that record has got such a great sound. And he just looks at me and he goes, Jerry Douglas. That's all he says. Because nothing more needed to be said.
I remember the day we did that. I remember where I was sitting in the room. I mean, Steve Warner's is such a great guy. He's been a friend of mine forever. And it was a pleasure to play on his record. I remember his producer was Tony Brown, who was also a really good friend of mine. We'd worked on tons of records together. So to get to play on Steve's record was a total pleasure.
Yeah, and
and a great song.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's a great. It's one of those kind of symbiosis things where everything just works. It's a great song. Steve's obviously great. Your Dobro work is great. The whole thing just gels, and I think just a great piece.
It was just a big good time.
Yeah.
Real good time.
Well, I'll tell you, you talk about played on this session. You have played on over 2,000 albums.
I guess so. Somebody keeps track of that stuff, and it's not me.
Well, I'll tell you, one year at CRS, they've got all the different suites for everybody, and of course, everybody's talking about stuff. And I walked into one of the suites, and the conversation going was people were betting who had done more sessions in the last year, you or Jimmy Capps. And nobody could come to a conclusion as to who actually, it was. So, but it was back and forth, and it was very, entertaining because, guys who had played with both of you were chiming in, well, I was on this one and I was on that session and we did this record, and it's like, yeah, well, I was on this, and this. It was very entertaining.
Jimmy Capps was a really a nice fellow, who I would see most likely at the Opry, because when I was recording, most times I'd go in as an overdub. I love being there on the tracks, when everybody's there and it's all going down the rhythm section and everything. But most of the time, I come in later when everybody's gone home and the dust is settled and all the stories are told. And so I would come in and do my overdub and just be a sweetener to the track, or, they'd hold a solo out for me or something, or I'd be replacing a saxophone. I've done that a lot in my life. But Jimmy Capps was a one of a kind, beautiful fella. And always, never a sullen moment, always a smile. And he's really missed. I mean, if you go to the Opry, you can look around for Jimmy Capps, and there's a huge hole there without that fellow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, he was just a sweet fella, and the Opry's not the same for me to go there without seeing Jimmy.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, he could make so much with so few notes.
That is the art. That's an art form. I mean, to say the most in one note, without, instead of spraying the thing with notes, and everybody coming away scratching their head. What was that all about? But just one note and placed perfectly in a place, that accented and backed up the vocal, and didn't get in the way at all. And that's what we all look for. Those are the things we all look for, and they're very few and far between. Yeah. That's magic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, the getting to start to your debut album, Fluxology. I remember the first time I heard that album, and a friend of mine told me, he's like, you got to listen to this. So yeah, I do, and of course the title track is the opening.
God, you're old.
I don't like to admit it, but yeah. Not that the gray beard gives it away or anything.
No. That's all. That you colored that, yeah. Under that hat's a shock of black hair, I'm sure.
Well, that's exactly what it is. The budget for hair and makeup isn't big enough to cover what this needs. So this keeps the reflectivity down.
Yeah.
But what struck me, and it is like one of the hallmarks of your career is you've got the title track that you wrote, then you go into the traditional Bill Cheatham, and then you go into Burt Bacharach's Hal David Say a Little Prayer.
Why?
But that was the thing that when I heard it, it was just because I didn't because the buddy of mine who had the album, it was telling me he just puts it on, doesn't let me see anything about it. So I'm going, okay, yeah. And then it was like out of the blue, I hit this. And it's like, wow, this is fantastic. Because you took a song that by all rights was never intended to be done that way, and you made it sound like it had been intended to be that way.
Well, that's something. I'm glad to hear you say that. You're the first person to ever say that. I was just experimenting with a tuning, and that song. It adapted, the tuning adapted well to that song, and it had been a popular. This is how old I am. That it hadn't been that long since it was a popular song,
right? And
Mike Aldridge though had done the same kind of thing with "Killing Me Softly," well, but it was just you drop your low G string on the dobro. Dobro is tuned from low to high. It's tuned G, B, D, G, B, D, octave up on the high end. But you drop your low G string down to an E, and it puts you in like Steely Dan territory, Mm-hmm. This everywhere you move your bar is a new chord that you've never heard before. You've never heard yourself play on a dobro. So I was experimenting with that, and that song just kind of fell toward me. And when I took that out there, when I told Tony Rice we were going to record that song, he said, "What?
Are you insane?"
Because everybody knew it, or thought they did. It's like James Taylor songs. You think you know them until you play them with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because nothing ever resolves. No chord ever really resolves. And when you learn that, then you can play the song. And then you can figure out the real chords to it, because it's ingrained in you. You've heard it so much that you think you know it. And then you sit down and you play it, and it's like, uh-oh, this is not what I thought at all. But it was that kind of song. I mean, we played after we did that recording session. We played at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco, because I flew out to San Francisco to cut that record, and or the first half of it anyway. And there was a place we always played called the Great American Music Hall in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. And the place was full because David Grisman was there with me, and Tony. I brought the whole shooting match there with me. Ricky Skaggs. I won't drop any more names. Paul McCartney said it's not nice to drop names. So we started playing that song, and then the whole place went, "What?" So I never played it again. It's just fun to go to that tuning once in a while, and there you go. It just falls out.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you know what? I had the same effect years later. Cox Family did Del Shannon's Runaway.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was the same thing where here's a song that you never in a million years would think of, in that setting,
Hmm.
and it works. It's phenomenal.
Well, those people could sing the newspaper or the phone book, and it would sound like a hit song.
Yeah.
They're so beautiful. Yeah, great song. When I first started working with Allison when she was like 14, 15 years old, she said, "I want to bring this friend of mine up to sing." I said, "Who's it?" And she said, "Suzanne Cox. You probably don't know her." And I said, "No, I don't know her, but I'll trust you." And she brought Suzanne up there, and Suzanne just sang like an angel. And her voice was so perfect to go along with Allison's. I mean, they had the same vibrato and the same tonality in their voices. So the Cox family, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, I'll tell you, that actually kind of segues into one of the questions that we received. Uh, and Jerry in Missouri wants to know how you came to work with Allison and Union Station.
Well, I worked with Union Station much, as a member of the band much later. I met her when she was 14. Excuse me. The head of a guy from Rounder Records, Ken Irwin, one of the original, what they call the Rounder founders, Marion Layton and Bill Nolan and Ken Irwin. Ken had signed Allison, had heard her at a festival somewhere, and had the good sense to just sign her up. And so he brought her to Nashville, and he brought her to Bela Fleck's house, and called me and called Sam Bush, and we show up at Bela's, and here's Allison and her parents, and it must have been like she must have hated doing this, but she just kind of played in front of us, auditioned for. He was looking for a producer for her records, and he thought of us first, which was nice. And so the other fellows didn't play on the first record, but I did, and I was sort of like floor manager, and if there was a bad arrangement call, I would step in and say something, but wasn't much of that going on. But she was 14 when I first met her, and I worked on just about every record, with the band Union Station that she was in. That it had been a band before she joined it, and then everybody kind of fell away, and there was Allison with the band Union Station. So that's how it became her band. But I played on everything that she recorded pretty much. And that is a cool thing to think about now that I do think about it. But she learned how to produce her own records. Bill Borndick and I produced I've Got That Old Feeling, and I think that was the first bluegrass record that went over, 100,000, or more units sold. And then I was just in the studio, working in the studio all the time. And I was right before this happened, right before this big, we had a big tornado here in Nashville. I was producing this band, a bluegrass band, the little, what were they called? Anyway, we were in a studio, and I get this call from Allison. She said, "Adam, Steffi has left the band, and we have some dates, but we're really not sure if we want to even continue to be a band or anything.
Wow.
But would you think about going out and doing these dates with us?" We just thought maybe completely change it, and go from mandolin to dobro. And I said, "Well, let me talk to my wife, because going out on the road, that's a commitment, that's a change in our lifestyle." So, but I was ready, because I'd been sort of off the road for about 5-10 years, and but it came back. She said, "Yeah, Jill loved Allison as well." So yeah, I went out with the band, and I did what was the beginning of about like 2 weeks of shows, and they cornered me one night, and they said, about after the third show, and said, "Would you just stay? We'll keep going." And I said, "Yeah, I'll stay." Yeah, it's just like it's a gold mine. It's like stepping into a gold mine where it's been hardly been touched, and and you've got all this raw talent around you. You know, Ron Block and Barry Bales and Dan Tominski and Allison. Wow, you know, what kind of clay is that? You know, to mold, and you know, not for me to do, but just to take this whole thing in another place where it hadn't been. So that's how that happened. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the questions that came up frequently was in regard to Allison and Union Station was new favorite. People are just enamored with the sound of that record. And I can't disagree with them. It's a fantastic sounding record. What's the story behind that one?
Well, that record, you know, that was the first record that I did as part of the band. And we would go to Allison's house and rehearse all these songs. We had such a pile of songs, and she had so many songs saved back that she had just kind of pushed back over the years because she didn't have the band wasn't really that right kind of band for it. But suddenly, with me there as being another voice, a sustained instrument, something that could back up her vocal, you know, and stay with her through a vocal line, I think was and was something different. So we rehearse all the time. We really rehearsed these songs and fleshed them out because I was a studio guy at that point, so that was what I was used to doing. And the other fellows didn't really have a lot of input at that point until maybe the second record we did together. And then everybody had ideas. But at that point, it was just sort of me and Allison fleshing all these things out and going, what if we did it this way? If we did, we turned over every stone. And that's what you do when you go in, but if you're ready to go in the studio and record, you rehearse the things to death and know them inside out. And then we got in there, and Gary Pachosa, too, is very important. He was the engineer for that record and just got the most beautiful sounds. He was a protege of another guy, an engineer that I worked with named Chuck Ainley, who's done millions of records, did all the, you know, after Mark Knopfler left Dire Straits, Chuck did a lot of those records, a lot of Mark's records, and with a lot of guys from Nashville. You know, they all sort of went over there and started working with Mark. But Chuck was the boss on the strength. Chuck did the strength and numbers. He was the engineer for strength and numbers, and Gary was the second engineer. And the only thing I saw Gary was like maybe putting down a microphone cable and plugging something in, and then Chuck would send him to different places after a particular kind of pie that he wanted. That was what they used to do. The engineer would just torture the second engineer for the entire. He was entertainment for the band, you know. But Gary came out of that as such a great engineer, and I'm going to work with him on Monday. But you know, these things go on. I mean, old musicians, you know, musicians don't die; they just decay. You've heard that. Engineers are the same, and Gary's one of the greatest engineers this town's ever seen, and Chuck. Yeah, that's the magic sound of that record. Plus, that we worked on it hard. We gave it everything we had, and the song "New Favorite" is so haunting still to me. I know all the pieces that are in it, but I know the way he recorded it and the way he used his reverbs and things, you know, and little extra things that he did. Maybe he used just the return of a reverb or something, so you didn't hear an attack of an instrument, you know, and it just kind of appears. And he's a master at his trade.
Yeah, the haunting is exactly the phrase that I would use to describe that track.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when you hear it, it immediately stops everything and you're just drawn to it. It's like you can't escape it in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. That song is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's another one of those songs that we mined from what's her name? Well, anyway, I'm forgetting names today, but just great songwriters.
Was that Gillian Welch?
Gillian Welch. Yeah, yeah, she wrote that song. We cut a lot of her songs because she just sort of wrote in a vein that Allison could really relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And that song, New Favorite, is just so heartbreaking. You have a new favorite. It's like,
Yep.
Allison's really good. If it's not sad, she's not interested.
Here's my checklist.
She calls them all these pitiful songs that we record.
If they're not crying when I'm done, I don't want it.
No, that's right. She wants to really affect somebody.
Well, she succeeds. Well, tell you what, you have won so many awards. You strike me as a guy who appreciates it. You're genuinely pleased to get the accolades from your peers. However, that's not, you appreciate it, but that's not why you do it.
No, yes, that's what I wanted to say was that's not why we do this. It's not. The Grammys are a spectacle. You go to the Grammys to watch the show, to see the spectacle. It's like going to the circus. And crazy pyrotechnics, all this really craziness happens at those things. So it's a fun show to go to, but winning an award it kind of puts you on the spot. It's kind of embarrassing, a little bit embarrassing, but you should accept it graciously and thank the people who voted for it. I mean, that's only right. But how they arrive at you winning an award is a different situation, and I'm always a little bit. Well, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you think that much of me, and that's great. But tomorrow we're all going back to work.
It all starts over.
All starts all over again, and everybody in the room is doing the same thing.
Yeah. Tell me this. I knew a guy who was a bodyguard for we'll say, major rock star. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he told me, he says, I've never seen, he says, it seems like he'd work with a lot of names, we'll say. And he says, most folks are pretty low key about it. He says, but this guy, when you get to his house, there's one room that's his shrine. And soon as somebody gets to the house, the first place that he would take them is to the shrine, so everybody would know how important he is.
Oh.
I have a feeling that you don't have a shrine. You've got to get a box someplace. It's like, yeah.
I have a box full of them downstairs in my garage. That this particular award was just so ugly. My wife wouldn't let me bring it in the house. So there's a box full of them downstairs. And I remember one time I won an award that I'd won a few times. So they gave me they kind of retired me, put me out to pasture by this last award. And I gave it to my son in hopes that he would come out of diapers soon. And so I wrapped a Kleenex around this naked man statue and gave it to him as an award when he came out of the diapers. That's a terrible thing to do. I mean, but I just happened to have it, so it worked for him. But my wife we have a place where all of those awards are, and I walk by it every day, and I just don't look at it.
Yeah,
I don't. Well, and I know Allison. I don't think she has one in her whole house. I think she just farms them out.
And she's won more than any female in the history of the Grammys.
Yeah. And she's got more coming.
Oh, absolutely.
Not anywhere close to done. So, yeah, she's going to surpass her own. She was going to break her own glass ceiling.
Yeah. Well, for the folks who may not, be super familiar, you have won 14 Grammys. You were named CMA's Musician of the Year 3 times, 02, 05, 07. And then you're the 10-time recipient of the International Bluegrass Music Association's Dobro Player of the Year Award.
That's enough, isn't it?
It's impressive.
Well, these things, I think that, it kind of goes, if you win it one year, it kind of gets stuck in their heads and they keep giving it to you.
The name recognition.
They don't know who anyone else is. And you're going, Chet Atkins finally took himself out of it. Did. And a lot of people have won that award multiple times. And it's a great thing. And what was I going to say? Well, I know. It's nice to win, but I wish they would do more research and find out who all of these other players are that are so good. There's so many people out there. I mean, at one time there were 3 or 4 major Dobro players, and I was trying to learn everything I could from every one of them, just from records, because I didn't know them. But I met Josh Graves, who played with Flatt and Scruggs. That was my all-time hero. And then I met Mike Aldridge. And we would talk, but we were peers. At that point, we were just talking to each other not about the guitar so much as just about our lives, and got together more on a personal basis. But there are so many great dobro players out there. Rob Ickes has won that thing more times than I have, and he's dobro players are kind of, I find them as pretty cerebral people. They think about it, they take that 1 more second or 2 more seconds before they answer the question, and Mike was that way. Josh was sort of that way. He was from the really old school, so he had a joke for everything. But there are so many players that are so good and young and have just taken it. They learn from me, they learn from Rob, they learn from Josh and Mike. There has been a lineage now, so there is a lot of information for them to take on and then find their own voice. It's good to copy somebody and get really close and get really good at what you're doing, but it's important to find your own voice at some point, and that's what the difference is. And that's what I think I guess that's what the audience is looking for. The voting community is looking for. I mean, I vote for other people at this point, I want the other people on the ballot. And so there are just so many. That's what the award thing, it's just like, I kind of wished this year they would take a break from awards and just like let the dust settle a little bit, and see how we all came out of the COVID, this whole COVID emergency, and see what floated to the top.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. You mentioned a lot of great players. You did the Great Dobro sessions where you had a lot of these folks. How did that album come about?
I'd been talking about doing something like that because and Tut Taylor had the same idea. We had the same idea at the same time because we had Josh Graves, Bashful Brother Oswald, and Tut were all in their late 70s, early 80s. And I thought, well, this is a snapshot of dobro playing to this time, to this period. And any dobro record that's going to come after this that has multiple dobro players on it is not going to have those guys, So I want to do this while, give me my roses while I'm living, for them. And it was beautiful because I started with Bashful Brother Oswald, who played with Roy Acuff on the Grand Ole Opry. He was in the most frail condition of everybody. And so I started with him and got him finished. And I figured, well, okay, he's done his part. He'll be happy to just, go ahead and go on and let everybody do their thing. But he came back every day.
Wow.
He came back every day just to be with fellow dobro players, people who spoke his language. And Josh was the same way. So the whole control room was just full of dobro players, debris, we call it. And everybody, Sally Van Meter and Rob Ickes, Stacy, there are all these people. But you know what? I told Rob the other day, I said, of those 10 dobro players, I said, Tut and I decided we'll get 10 dobro players, each do 2 songs, 20 songs. That's a lot of songs. That's a lot of dobro music. And but it won a Grammy. It won a Grammy. It won everything at the IBMA. Except female vocalist. It served well. And I'll also say, it wasn't done for that reason to win awards. It was done because in homage.
Right. It was a passion project.
Totally. I sat in there. Rob told me the other day. He said he went back to get something after the last session, and he said I was asleep on a baffle. A studio baffle that separates people from each other, keeps the music from bleeding into microphones. He said he went back to tell me something, and I was asleep on a baffle in one of the rooms. I was worn out, man. But of those all those dobro players on that record, only Rob, Sally Van Meter, and I are still here. Curtis Birch is still here, but he because of some chemo that he had to do, he can't touch metal, and which is a tragedy. As Curtis is one of my favorite all-time dobro players, and he played with Newgrass Revival back in the day, and Sam would go, "It's dobro time," and Curtis would come out and play like Randy Lynn Rag or something like that. That was a Josh Graves song. He was. Josh was everybody's hero, and he played that, and the whole place would go nuts. And I was just so happy because here's this hippie band on stage, and I'm 10 years old, and they're playing what I want to hear. It completed the picture for me.
Yeah.
But that record did great, and there have been other records, collections of dobro players, but none of them are going to have Mike Aldridge and Stacey Phillips and Gene Wooten and Tut Taylor and Josh Graves and Bashful Brother Oswald. Those guys are all gone.
Yeah.
So we won't hear that again. And then that's it. But it was, like I say, just a snapshot of what the instrument, where it was at that point.
Yeah. Well, you had your version of Birdland on that.
Yeah, I stretched it a little. But that was one of the, I didn't want everybody to just play the same kind of music.
Right.
I said, go ahead and stretch out. Gene Wooten said, I'm going to do, he did a Beatles song.
Day Tripper.
He did Day Tripper. I said, if you don't do it, you don't have a, and he did it. And I was just in the studio jumping up and down because that just gave me the greatest pleasure to hear him do something like that. And everybody was playing, Mike Aldridge was playing 8-string dobro and playing swing tunes, and it was crazy. And Oz did what he did, Josh did what he did, and we could have all just played that. But it would have been, why would we do that when we got Josh Graves there to do that?
There you go.
It was like everybody show your strength and see and show where you stand with different genres of music on this record. So it's a mixed bag. But it's all great players, and most that aren't here anymore.
Yeah, well, for me, the litmus test of a good song is if it can be done in multiple genres and sound at home in all of them. There's some songs that only work one way, and while they might be a good song in that vein, they're not a great song.
Right.
Right. So that's how I look at it. It's like say a little prayer. Anything Burt Bacharach does, pretty much can be done. I mean, I don't think people realize all the R&B stuff. They know the 70s pop, but they don't think about the late 50s, early 60s R&B, hits that were his songs.
Oh, right. He was everywhere. He was all over the place, and they were all hit songs. He didn't write. I mean, certainly he wrote clunkers because you don't write 200 hit songs without writing 500 clunkers,
Right. Exactly.
That just doesn't happen. And any songwriter will tell you that you have to get the bad stuff out because there becomes a logjam of bad ideas that you have to get them out. and they take up a lot of space. So you want to get those out. But yeah, you're right. A really good song can be done in any genre, by the right people. and it can shine. And you just have to find the essence of that song and magnify that.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'd read a quote talking about different genres, and a guy who was praising you to no end was John Fogerty. Who in Vintage Guitar Magazine about 10 years or so ago said, Jerry Douglas is my favorite musician of all time. He just does it to my entire psyche, my heart, my memory, the whole thing. Now, how cool is it to have the guy who wrote Bad Moon Rising and Green River and Proud Mary?
That blew me away. When I read that, by then he and I were friends. We have the same birthday. And I was actually used as a foil one time. His wife threw a huge party for him for a major birthday. And I flew out to LA and went to his studio and had him drag out every Dobro that he owned to show me. I said, I want to see your collection, And he drug them all out. And then I said, oh, I've got to go. I've got dinner with Gibson Guitars. I have to go. And I had a car outside waiting on me that took me straight to his house. And I had a guitar to give him for his birthday. And I get out of the car, I hand the guitar out the door, and Bruce Springsteen takes the guitar.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, thanks, Bruce. He said, no problem, Jerry. I fell over again. This is just like, this can't be happening. There's a whole lawn full of like icons waiting for John to arrive from the studio, but I left him back there packing Dobro cases. He's gonna be here for a while. But yeah, he's a great guy, and I remember telling when Green River came out, I remember taking that record to school and telling all my friends in what it was like 5th grade or something. I said, you see this guy? I'm going to play music with this guy someday.
Oh, wow.
And it only took like 35 years, but I did.
But you did.
I did. I did. And he's become a great friend, and we call each other up on birthdays, and cool stuff happens. He's still that guy. And what an amazing person. I mean, to write those songs, he was like, he wrote all of those great big giant songs before he was 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jimmy Webb did the same thing. Oh, they're just savants. They are so tuned into themselves and the language and the times. Like when he wrote "Fortunate Son," it wasn't anything. It wasn't like there wasn't any current. Probably there is, but he wrote it during the Vietnam War,
right?
And he didn't like what was happening, but that was a different time. And John, in Bad Moon Rising, we always thought there's the bathroom on the right.
Exactly.
That's the words to that song. And I remember hearing that song, at my grandmother's house or something on the radio when one of the other cousins would come in and have a secret radio we could listen to rock and roll on,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So good memories mixed up with current events,
Right.
That's what life's about.
Absolutely. Well, tell you what, we better get to some of the questions we got from folks here. Okay. Sam in Tennessee wants to know the story behind We Hide and Seek from the Slide Rule album.
Holy. Well, that started out as an exercise, as a da-da-da, I always thought of Volare every time I was. Now I've given away my whole thing. But every time I start playing, I'd think, oh, Volare. And then it's like, no, you can't do that. So I changed the meter. I started changing the meter in the song, and the song has got like 6 different time signatures in it. But if you don't listen to the beats, if you go by the melody, if you just learn the melody, it's a very simple thing, but it's hard for the bass player. The bass player he's the one that makes the song work or fail. And I was really proud of it too, because Bela Fleck had problems with it when learning it. So I thought, finally, Finally, I got something hard for him to play because he's been throwing stuff at me for years. But Spain was the first thing that Bela and I ever played together. So, and I had no idea how to play it, hadn't never heard it, and I just lived in a vacuum, I guess. But that opened up a whole new world for me. Bela's like a little brother, but what a wonderful guy. What a wonderful brother he is. And but hide and seek started out as an exercise, but then grew these other parts, and they all had to be had to have a little strange twist to them from getting from one section to the other. And then all of a sudden there's a huge bluegrass section and everybody goes, okay, we can do this. We can stop counting now. But it's been a good song for the mailbox.
Yeah.
Because it's on about 5 different records, and it's on my record, and it's on an Allison, the live record we did in Louisville, and it's on a Cracker Barrel record, and it just keeps getting better. And one night I was playing it with my band, with a big band, with horns and everything, and a fella this farmer came up to me and he said, "Play that song, Come and Go." And I said, "I don't play a song called Come and Go." And he said, "Yeah, you do."
You don't know your own stuff, Jerry?
Yeah, what are you going to say to that? I said, well, you describe it for me. And he said, well, you play it for a long time, and then he plays it for a long time, and then he plays it for a long time, and then you play it again, and then end it. I said, well, that's like every song we do. That's not a good one. So
you're not helping me here.
I finally figured out he was talking about hide and seek. So I thought maybe I could change the title to Come and Go and put it on a few more records. Get some more mailbox money.
There you go. Of course, you do realize there's Dobro players everywhere now mining the Dean Martin playlist to try to find songs.
Well, yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's where you go and find stuff, ideas. I mean, for years I had no Dobro players to listen to. After I kind of burst into this bluegrass scene, playing with the Country Gentlemen, I had listened to Josh and Aldridge, and suddenly I'm in this same position they are, and I have to find my own voice, and I have to find some ideas. So I started listening to saxophone players, pedal steel players, lead guitar players, Clapton and Jeff Beck a lot, and just go outside my genre and find other things to play and sort of see if the guitar could do that. And it worked out nice. And then I found other like-minded musicians, and we just turned bluegrass upside down on its head for a while. I'm one of the leading contributors of that ill-fated move. But then I come back to turn it all back on its head again with the Earls of Leicester, So that was my grounding, lifetime grounding move.
Yeah.
Get back to that kind of music.
Yeah. Well, with all the projects that you have going, yeah, you're like a 6-year-old who just downed a dozen pixie sticks, because you got the Earls, you got Union Station, you got the Transatlantic stations, you got your band, producing, playing on. I mean, good Lord.
Well, I think of it all as collaboration. I think of myself as one musician, trying to find as much information and trying to learn and play as many different kinds of songs as I can in different classical music and in jazz, country, bluegrass, pop, punk, thrash metal. But that's the way I think of it, as collaboration. And I've been really, really fortunate and have come across some of the greatest musicians in the world, been lucky enough to play with some great ones and some singers. That's really the thing I love to do is try to help a really good singer get their point across.
Well, one thing is that I've, I think I've noticed, I could be wrong here, but you seem to do like counter melodies to spot so that the singers spotlight is kind of, made even brighter, if you will.
Yeah, the art to that is staying out of the way. You're staying out of the way, making a statement, and like I was saying earlier, accent the substance, play, don't come wailing in with some Lydian scale, on top of a beautiful melody. You're just going to wreck. It's like a bowling ball. So you kind of play in the play. It's movie music. You want it to have a point. The vocal is the star always. So I'm never going to try to take that over. When it gets to time, if I get a solo, I will play a counter melody, some way turn the melody inside out. But in the end, I want to reveal it again, so I can lead the singer right back into where they came from, and it's a conversation,
right?
Really. That's how I think of it. It's a conversation, and you want that conversation to go on. You don't want somebody to break into it and just fragment the whole thing. You want to continue it. So that's my job. That's what, especially with Allison, with such a voice, such a. I think of it. It's a tool, that she has in her toolbox where she can belt too. She's a rock singer who's got this really soft, angelic voice, and she knows exactly what to do with it, and when to pull it out, and when to pull the other one out too. She's a force to be reckoned with, and so is Vince Gill, and some other people that I've worked, Ricky Skaggs, and there's a huge list of them, and I've been very, very fortunate, and I don't take any of that for granted. It's just a wonderful life, to be able to rub elbows with those people and to be able to play and be part of their conversation.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we got a couple more questions to get to here, as long as you got time.
I got time.
Robin in California wants to know what TOB stands for from the Under the Wire album.
Tim O'Brien. At the time when I cut that record, Tim and I were like joined at the hip. And I think I produced a couple of records for him around that time. And he's just an amazing songwriter. He's just always writing. He's proficient. He knows what to say, knows how to turn a phrase. He's great with words. I wish I could do that, and I've tried it a few times and in his presence and failed miserably. But he's Tim O'Brien was and still is a really really good friend of mine, really important person in my world. Yeah. So that's solves that one. That one was easy.
And that's another track that's been featured on so many things.
Yeah. He's that song. I don't really know what about that song offers up Tim O'Brien, but it was just I think it's a lot of the song is in B minor, which is a really nice, beautiful chord on a dobro, and just lends itself well. And there was a lot of that in there, and I think that probably had something to do with me thinking about some song that he had written, and hence the name.
Yeah, all right. I'll tell you what, Alma in South Carolina wants to know what it was like playing with Dolly Parton.
Oh, Dolly, Queen Dolly. Dolly, she gave money for this vaccine. She's every time her name goes away from the headlines, she doesn't do these things on purpose. She doesn't go out and she does sell herself. She's proud of the fact that she can sell herself as well as anybody. But she gave a lot of money um, to Vanderbilt University here in Nashville in order to help them come up with a vaccine for COVID-19, and it worked. And without her, it may not have happened. And but working with her, she's salty, as most people know. She's salty. She can hold her ground with the best of the good old boys, right? That's what she came up in. I mean, she was breaking glass ceilings before anybody even knew what it was. She just was so powerful. There was no stopping her, and plus she looks good, and she had so many things going for her. From being a little girl, teenager. She's well documented, but being with her, one of the surprising things about when we were recording. Either Little Sparrow or The Grass is Blue, one of the first bluegrass records that she did. I think it was The Grass is Blue. We had, they had hired these caterers that brought in all this really fancy food for us to have. But Dolly had brought a big pan of chicken and dumplings. And we didn't touch the other food. We went to the chicken and dumplings because, she can't really go to restaurants.
Right.
Because if she orders, everybody comes to the table to get her autograph. And so I've only been in one restaurant with Dolly, and it was sort of like a private room situation. And it was after we had done the Tonight Show or something like that in LA. And we went to a restaurant, her favorite Indian restaurant. So, and it was great. But Dolly is a great cook. And, she cooks country food, which I grew up on. And the choice of me having a finger sandwich, that these guys had prepared over here, or having chicken and dumplings that Dolly Parton had cooked.
Right.
There's no contest there.
I wouldn't think.
No, and she just kept making them, and we kept eating them. But she's a beautiful person. She was really, my kids came in, and I've got a picture of my two little girls who were like 4 and 5, sitting on one on each knee of Aunt Dolly, and she has this perfume that just permeates everything. And those two little girls went home smelling like Dolly Parton. All their friends they went back to school, and their friends were going, "What's that perfume?" And they're going, "Oh, that's Dolly." And my son Grant took his picture with Dolly, also her sitting on his lap. He's just like, that's what she's like.
Uh-huh.
And he had it blown up and put on the back of his dorm wall. But she's there was one point we were doing a song called Cash on the Barrelhead, and there was one place or Sleep with One Eye Open. I don't know which song it was, but I had to cue her. I would give her this cue, and I was playing, and I remember here comes the cue. So I just went like this, and my middle finger came up, and I after the song, I said, "Dolly, I'm really sorry about that cue. It wasn't anything personal about that." And she said, "Oh, Jerry, don't worry about it, whatever it takes." But she's just one of the gang. She's one of the gang. When you're with her, you're included. You don't feel like I'm Dolly Parton and you're not. It's not like that at all. And she'll salt you right back. If she hears a conversation going on, she'll go get in it and Dolly eyes it.
Uh-huh.
But she's a beautiful human being, has done so much for this country. There's a thing that she does, the Imagination Library.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
For my grandchildren will get a book until they're 5 years old. They get a book a month from the Imagination Library. And it's just, she's done so much for education, and the people there was a big fire in Gatlinburg that did so much damage and took people's homes away. And she supported them until they got on their feet, every one of them. It's a good thing she's got a lot of money, because I don't know what she would give them.
Mhm.
But she's giving. She's not got a hateful bone in her body. She's a wonderful person.
Yeah. Well, on Little Sparrow, talking about songs that come out of left field, the cover of Collective Soul's "Shine."
Yeah,
That
that
and
surprised all of us.
now, do you know who picked that? Was that her that picked that song?
She picked that song. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she's got her ears open to all kinds of things.
Yeah, because I know that when the record label sent me that album, when I try not to look at the songs on the album. I'll pop the disc open but not look, so it's a surprise, because I like that. Because especially with somebody who you never know what you're going to get.
Right. Yeah.
And when I heard the intro on that, I'm like, wait a minute, and then you hear it, it's like, I thought it worked better in Dolly's way. Don't get me wrong, I like the Collective Soul original.
Right.
And it's rare, when a cover surpasses the original. But I thought that song just completely worked and was phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think she knew that was going to happen. She's that in tune with everything. She there's no guesswork anywhere about her. It's a formulated plan.
Mm-hmm.
And especially that song, I guess she was hoping we could pull it off. She was going to pull it off. She had her part figured out, but the rest of us, we're all scratching our heads. Okay, how are we going to get into this song, and how are we going to get out of this song, and then we'll worry about what happens in between as it goes. But it was such a great crew of musicians, too. That's the cream of the crop right there when we were doing that record. And Steve Buckingham was the producer of that record, and everything that Dolly was doing in that period. And he had a great hand in selecting the songs and the musicians, and he asked me at one point, who should we get to play on this? And I went, this is easy for me. Stuart Duncan. Stuart Duncan. And what kind of banjo player do you want? He said, a bluegrass banjo player. So Jim Mills. And Sam Bush. Nobody plays rhythm like Sam Bush does, and killer solos. And Brian Sutton was the amazing guitar player of our time. And Barry Bales, nobody more firm that I've ever worked with, who can, it's rock solid, he's going to keep it right there. You depend on that guy. So It was an easy call. And it's not often that you can do that you can put all those people in the same room, because everybody's so busy. But when you mention, this is for a Dolly Parton, it's like, I'm there.
You don't have to ask me twice.
Cleared the schedule, no funerals, no. So that was Dolly Parton. She should get the Nobel Peace Prize this year. I just every year.
Yeah. I would not going to get an argument from me.
If I could vote on that, I would have been doing that for years anyway.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Jeff in Texas wants to know the difference between a dobro and a national guitar. Okay.
Here's a little history lesson. The Dobro brothers, who came from a little town called Trnava, Slovakia, when the Czech Republic, it used to be Czechoslovakia, when that split, when Gorbachev came through, split, Glasnost, everything split. It went back to Slovakia and the capital of Slovakia is Bratislava. And I only know this because I had gone through there on another tour before, and I knew that the Dobro brothers, who were it was their brainchild, was the Dobro guitar, but first the national guitar, the metal guitar. Most national guitars are thought of as metal-bodied guitars. They're brass, chrome-plated brass guitars, or plated steel guitars. But they and a fellow named Beauchamp came up with the national guitar, and then there was some argument there. Something went down that They that was in Chicago. They were in Chicago, and they had immigrated from Slovakia over to and landed in Chicago. Came through Toronto, I think, and then immigrated through. And then I don't think they liked the cold weather in Chicago.
I don't blame them.
And they had a problem with the company heads, So they moved to Los Angeles, Huntington Beach, and they started making wooden bodied guitars. And it wasn't, for a long time I thought it was because of the war effort, in the metal, that it was everybody needed the metal for something else. But it became it was really there was a Hawaiian music craze in the United States in the 20s, in the late 1910s, and then into the 20s and into the 30s. But they were building guitars for Hawaiian music, but they were, because of where they came from, and they had heard these loud oompa bands, bands with great big horns and everything. They liked Hawaiian music, but it wasn't loud enough. So they invented this spun aluminum cone that's kind of like a speaker cone, like what you see in any speaker, audio speaker. They made it out of spun aluminum, and they got this right. I don't know how they did this, meaning they got so many things right the first time around. The circumference, the size of it, the cover plate that goes on top of it that really tells you that it is a Dobro guitar, or Resophonic guitar as it's called right now, but I still like to call them Dobro guitars. And Dobro is short for Dopiera Brothers. There were 5 brothers. So, but they started at National and got a lot of people playing soul hoopy, a lot of people who were playing really famous Hawaiian guitarists playing the National guitars. And then they went out to California, started building these wooden guitars, plywood guitars. But they had the secret was that contraption that was in the middle of there, that shiny hubcap part. And they figured it all out, though. I mean, the front part of where the 2 screens are up at the top of the guitar, that is the bass end of the guitar. You would think the bass end would be the back, where all the big, with the size is. But the bass is really, because of the way the guitar is built, it throws all the bass toward the top of the guitar. And those screens were sort of suppressors in a way that kept the too much bass from coming out of the guitar. So that's the answer to it, though. In the late 20s, I think they started building the guitars in 27, but the first year that they were actually available to public was 1928. And I've seen Dobro orchestras, pictures of Dobro orchestras in California, where you'd have 150 people, and they all had a brand new 1932 Dobro.
Wow.
And, and you look at those guitars, and they're all like brand new, like right off the showroom floor. And, by the time we've gotten them now, they've got wear. Somebody wrote their name in the back. The first real Dobro I got had Josh Graves had written in ballpoint pen on the back.
Oh, wow.
Autograph. And I went, that's absolutely my guitar. I have to have that. And that was the first real Dobro guitar that I had, and I still have it. It's actually in the Country Music Hall of Fame now.
Wow.
As part of an exhibit. But that's the difference. Metal body versus wood body. They do kind of the same thing, but it's a different sound. The wood is, as you would think, more mellow, and has more voices, I think, than the metal bodies do. The metal bodies can be abrasive, percussive, but in the right hands, full of tone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hope that answers his question.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Tell you what, we'll hit you with one final, viewer question here. Bob in Tennessee wants to know, what is your most memorable recording session?
Woo!
There's an easy one for you.
Yeah. Well, I think because of, how I grew up and who inspired me, who influenced me. Man, there's been so many times I've met so many of my heroes, the people that I remember buying Jackson Brown's first single, "Doctor My Eyes," and that had David Lindley playing lap steel on it, and that got my attention. I remember buying that, and since then I've recorded with him. I've played a lot of shows with him. We did these. I got this shirt on. It's called the Lantern Tour. It was a show I did with Jackson and Emmy Lou and Sean Colvin, and I forget who all was on him. It's a lot of people, but I was the guy who got to play all the solos because they were all singer-songwriters and singers and playing guitars, but they didn't really play solos on the guitar. So I was the solo guy, and got to do that. But I'll have to just say it was the first time that I flew up to New York and at the request of James Taylor to play on Copperline on that.
Okay.
That was maybe the most scary and satisfying trip I think I've ever taken. And to go play on someone's record, to play on a James Taylor record, instantly that it's going to be, you're going to love it, but you're going to have to figure out how to stay out of his way, and you hopefully you'll get featured at some point, and you can say, hey, I played on the James Taylor record. But I've done it a lot since then, and it's never dulled. He's just a great guy. He is what you think he is. He's just a super guy, and I like meeting these people on the other end of their career. Like Eric Clapton, sweetheart. Has me come to the Crossroads festivals every year, and we all play, and it's just a big celebration, and it's like Christmas for guitar players. And but I've been really, really fortunate to meet some icons, men and women, and got to play on their records. And people ask, whose record have you not played on that you want to play on? And I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
well, that's a pretty short list, Jerry.
I feel fulfilled, but there's always something new. I mean, things come through here, because of COVID. I've done a lot of recording right here in my own studio where I am, where like I got samurai swords and crazy things all over the room here.
You can do a kabuki album.
Yeah, I could. I've got a cutout of Bob Ross over here in the corner, painting little trees and a lot of things just to take my mind off what I'm doing once in a while. When I lift my head up, there's like, whoa, it's too much stuff going on in here. But I've had a great career, and I've met some amazing people, and they were all at the top of their game. And I just try to leave something better than I found it. That's my motto. And,
there you go.
And I hope I've done that. And it's a wonderful life, and it's not over, please. But it's maybe we're just in the middle of it, I hope. And I couldn't find a more rewarding. I was supposed to go to University of Maryland, and I had an English scholarship. So I was going to end up being an English teacher. I think this is better. For me, I'm a Rhodes Scholar.
I think it worked out pretty good for everybody.
Yeah, good. But it's been an amazing trip, and it's not over. Every day something comes out. I'm producing a John Hyatt record right now, so I'm right in the middle of that. So I'm doing something with that every day. And John's coming over, and I did the background vocals the other day, and I still have more of that to do. I have to sing and play a few things, and John's coming over, and we're going to start working on it. We've got to mix the record pretty soon. And I've been working. I've played on like 40 or 50 different records during this COVID time, just right here in the studio, being my own engineer I've learned enough to be dangerous, and not ruin somebody's record with the sound. So I have some good equipment to do all that kind of thing with. But it's crazy times we're living in right now. But things are looking up. Things are really looking up, and I'm happy as a clam. I'm fine. I'm just fine.
Tell me this: how do you think your life would have been different had you gravitated to the didgeridoo rather than the dobro?
I would have been the best didgeridoo player in the world. I wouldn't have stopped until I thought, recognized or mentioned somewhere as like I don't know who that guy is, but maybe now I should find out.
Yeah, now I want to find him and get him on the show.
I have one.
Oh, do you really?
It was made for me by David Bloodworth in Australia, who's an Aboriginal, and he goes out into the bush and spends like weeks out there. Does it's an amazing country, Australia.
Oh, absolutely.
And what they've done for their indigenous people, and it's he made me a didgeridoo and gave it to me at a concert. I did a tour there with Tommy Emmanuel a couple of years ago, and I had to get it home, so I ended up, he shipped it home to me. So it was more of a $400 free. I paid the shipping, but it was $400 didgeridoo. I can't play a note on it, but I have a good film of him playing it, so I know it works.
Uh-huh. And you got a great story.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, and it's didgeridoo. Don't call me for a didgeridoo session yet.
Well, mark our calendars.
Yeah. Give me a year. Yeah.
All right, Jerry. We'll tell you what, on that note, we'll wrap this edition of our show up. We really do appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us here on Music Night.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for thinking of me for this. Yeah. I see on your wall back there, Dwayne Eddy.
Yes.
Back there, Dwayne Eddy's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Have you met him? Do you know him?
No. You know what? He is on our wish list of people.
You should get him. Every time I see him, he just takes off on the same conversation we were having like last time we saw
him 5
years ago. Yeah, but he's the kindest, gentlest, nicest guy in the whole world. He's a cheerleader for all musicians, and he's a wonderful guy. You should get him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there was a very long span in my youth when the Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel LP didn't leave one of my turntables.
I'm sure. Yeah, we all had that point. I mean, it was like, what's making that sound?
Oh, that's exactly what it was. How did they record it? How did Lee Hazelwood get that sound, on those records, that type of thing?
Lee Hazelwood was that guy. He was always looking for. He had a recording studio in his house, and a lot of us used to go and hang out there and record there. And
oh, wow.
We've made some great records in that house. And but Dwayne, he's the one that he cast the die, for everybody after that. I mean, just very simple guitar, but did exactly the thing that it needed to do to everyone at that time.
Well, it gets back to that, say so much with so little.
Right. He's working a whole lot with Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys here in Nashville. Every time I've been in the studio over there to do something with Dan, pretty soon in walks Dwayne.
Wow.
It's like it's Dwayne Eddy. It's like a cutout of Dwayne Eddy, a live one, and you just go, wow, dude.
Yeah,
you're thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw that back there though, and I wasn't going to get away from here without saying something.
He's one of my absolute favorites. So yeah, and usually with the album, we'll either do something that we put on the wall, either ties in directly, indirectly, or sometimes we'll just do something that's completely, out there, just to see if anybody even notices.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm seeing. I've been reading the wall.
All right. Well,
I've had a great time talking with you. Thanks.
well, yeah, they you same here. And the thing is, there's so much of your stuff we even get to. So hopefully in the future you'll be bored and want to come back.
Volume 2. Let's go for it.
All right, sounds good. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap this one up. Everybody, you can go to jerrydouglas.com to see everything. Well, almost everything, Jerry. You can follow him on Facebook and Instagram and probably everywhere else. If you go to allmusic.com, you can see the whole discography and sample, all that. It's 29 albums, 30 albums, something like that, Jerry?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So there's enough for people to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't run out of things to hear.
All right. Well, tell you what, everybody, thank you very much for watching. Jerry, thanks for being here. Everybody have a good night.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.